Dear Dan and Pogo Tribe. Dan, that analogy between food and sex was clever, but in my opinion it sadly came out short. You described some of the similarities, but you neglected to mention glaring differences. Namely, for one thing, the emotion that is or ought to be involved in these two acts are very different. I myself won't have a lot of time to go into this, but I will give a brief outline to get you started on this train of thought. When you eat, you are taking in substance which is required to give yourself continued life. When you have sex, you are giving that which is needed to create life. The two acts are significantly different in their intent, and so the emotions attached are also fundamentally different. At least, that would be the ideal. Currently, however, too many people see sex in a selfish light, getting satisfaction rather than viewing it as giving life, or giving trust, or loyalty. Another piece of your analogy that doesn't fit is the fact that one can abstain from food only for so long before the loss of health benefits of food catch up to them. However, one can abstain from sex without being detrimentally affected by not receiving the health benefits you listed, primarily because such health benefits can be acquired through regular exercise and proper nutrition anyways. However, just because the analogy was a bit flawed does not mean that I didn't see the points that you were trying to get across. I agree with your description of the cultural attitude towards sex. The topic of sexuality has become a difficult and embarrassing or even taboo subject for discussion between parent and children, or even between ecclesiastical leader and follower. I would like to express what I see as possible reasons this topic is avoided. The first reason I believe this subject is avoided is because of the horribly embarrassing and very public problems that have come about because of uncontrolled sexual urges. Namely, the porn industry, spread of STDs, rape, abuse, abortion, unwanted pregnancies, and countless orphans, and the list goes on. These are not the most pleasant things to discuss, and naturally when one talks about sexuality, or one will eventually need to address these issues. Another reason I believe this subject is so taboo is because it is such a powerful force in our lives, so powerful in fact that it can be overpowering for many. In one sense, giving in to those sexual urges can be considered as a weakness or a lack of self-control. We as humans naturally don't like being weak, and so we feel embarrassed when we do give in at times we shouldn't. Unfortunately, because of our cultural ignorance on the subject, things are made only worse. Because when a youth gives in to those urges, afterwards they often feel too ashamed to seek help in dealing constructively with those powerful urges. Now Dan, I have a question, because you state that you do not support the stance of abstinence only, but you also do not advocate free love. My question then is, where do you draw the line? What does the middle ground between these two extremes look like? What is permissible, what is not, and in which circumstances? In your opinion, what are the values that guide such judgment calls? Now, in my opinion, the general way we as a society are dealing with this matter is not advantageous. As you said, Dan, people should be less skittish about discussing the subject of sex. The way I see it, appropriate role models should be more willing to discuss openly and frequently with the youth about such urges. They should encourage the youth to acknowledge the fact that those urges are powerful, and that sometimes every person can feel a little overpowered by them, and that they need to seek help. The role model, especially religious leaders, need to be more compassionate and understanding towards the youth and help them understand that the way they are feeling is normal and that they are not screwed up. I have witnessed instances where a leader did make a follower feel like they were hopelessly screwed up for giving in to their urges. The results are not pleasant. However, I have to say at the same time, the leaders and our cultural morals should not lower the standard or ideal of abstinence before one is mature enough and prepared to deal with the physical and emotional consequences of sex, and of having a child. In other words, abstinence before marriage, and marriage after very careful meditation and consideration on the subject. In no way do I believe that we should be advocating or excusing behavior that is anything less than the ideal. While yes, for those who have given into weakness, role models should offer help and love instead of attempting to make the offender feel worse about themselves, the goal should still be to lovingly encourage everyone to work towards the ideal. We should not let these powerful urges run amok unchecked, for that is what has caused the problems that have made the subject embarrassing in the first place. A good subject to address, Dan, and good job. Till next time, I'm Stealth Blue. Adios.